there for sure. And then they reinvent it. But my problem with the reinventions is we're going to talk about Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton's an interesting Bond, but John Glenn, the director of the last 3 Roger Moore films, goes on to direct those films. And you can tell that's more the style he wanted to go the whole time. So it fits his style. But for me, as a director watching it, my issue is that it doesn't feel different enough than the last 3. Like the actual like lens choices and framing, like this, the color palette's different, the plot's different, and Bond's different. But the way things are captured and the actual like style behind the camera is too much the same for me to be fully different. So I feel like they're close, but they mildly missed the mark for me because I feel like they needed a different director.
Sure, and it would have made sense if they had chosen a different director, because again, it was a new Bond, and then there was a bit of time difference, and to make it fresh. It's interesting they didn't. Maybe they were worried that they didn't want to change things too much.
The guy did the last 3; they were successful. It's like you're comfortable working with somebody. I understand, and he wants a shot at it. He's maybe probably the one pitching in the room. That's the change to go. That's the route to go. So
quite possibly. Again, this is one I saw in the cinema, and I certainly, as a kid, I liked it. I thought it was good.
Love the song.
Yeah, absolutely. That was everywhere at the time. I remember it being played on the radio and everything else. Cool Bond car, even though it blows up like really early on. And again, it's that shift with the Timothy Dalton one where Bond now becomes almost like a one-woman man. That as in throughout the film, he's mainly with the same Bond girl, although at the very beginning he kind of lands on the boat, and there's that woman with the 80s phone. And
love that part, by the way. That the whole opening music and that whole opening scene is probably my favorite part of that movie. That's got like the techno version, like full on, like comes in.
That's right.
That's dope.
But again, and it's a lot of people sort of said, Timothy Dalton was bringing like a darker, grittier Bond, and I suppose he was in his style of acting. He was compared to the Roger Moore ones. But it was, it's still a movie of its time, and the baddie wasn't quite as established, I think. But having said that,
I'm not a fan of the bad guy. It's like my least favorite part of the movie is probably the villain.
But it had some interesting set pieces and different countries and locations and that sort of thing. I could watch it again now, and I wouldn't find it difficult to watch. I know the following one, License to Kill, again, kind of in a way you could kind of see the forerunner for the Daniel Craig sort of films, both going even more darker, and the whole idea of Bond kind of goes AWOL and that sort of thing. What's your thought on License to Kill? Because I remember I don't think it did very well when it came out either.
No, it did not do well at the box office. This was another like kind of one of the lowest grossing Bond films, but it was a crowded summer. It was like the first Bond, like Living Daylights didn't really catch on. 80s were a new time. You had Schwarzenegger movies, you had Stallone movies, you had movies like Aliens and Terminator, so stuff sci-fi started to take over. And in 89 alone, you had Back to the Future 3 came out, you had Indiana Jones 3, you had Batman, there was a new Star Trek movie, it was a big year for films, and that summer was kind of swamped with movies. So James Bond kind of got lost in the shuffle. License to Kill is one that's interesting. A lot of people love License to Kill. I go back and forth. My issue with License to Kill, and this is kind of with the early James Bond films, is that it's okay. They don't really have a lot of emotion into them, so they try to add the emotion. Starting with Brosnan is where they really try to. I mean, I guess actually starting with this film, they really try to add emotion into it. You could even say Living Daylights, even because he's supposed to know Yorgi. I'm a little connected, but in this film, it's like they kill Felix's wife, and it's supposed to be this whole crux of the story, and that would be interesting.
And it's almost like you see characters' actual lives, don't you? See them at home, and they now have actual backstory in it. And
it's cool, but the only issue is that like it's just like Felix changes every movie. There's been 12 Felixes, and he was in the last movie. So it's like, here's Felix. Like, aren't you sad we're torturing him? It's like, I guess he's just like, there's a different Felix every movie. Like, it's not like there's no connectivity to it. And watching it this time was really funny. I didn't pick up on it before, but like Felix doesn't even care his wife is dead, which is kind of funny. Like, his wife gets eaten by sharks, like brutally, and like later he's in the hospital and he's like, yeah, James, I'm feeling great. Like, all's good. He's always smiling and laughing, and I'm like, I don't know. And it's like, the whole movie, even the crux when he's in, he's like gives the lighter, and it's this big like, oh, sad revenge thing. And it's not that it doesn't work. The idea works, but it doesn't quite work because it's not, they treat us like we are supposed to relate to Felix. But even as someone who's seen all the films multiple times, I have no relationship to Felix at any point until the Daniel Craig films.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only because it's the same character, but you're right. It's almost like, even though he's mentioned before, he's not an important part. It's not Felix Leiter is there to help Bond in any way. It's not like Bond is particularly dependent on him. Therefore, say yes. So who is he? Yeah. So you're right. So it's like almost like you've missed like a massive scene where they establish who he is, which is interesting. And again, it kind of almost feels like it's trying to copy some of the 80s more action, hard-nosed film where it's just kind of like,
I mean, it's just about drugs anyways, and cocaine. So that's like right there, it's just a pure 80s thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Scarface, but with Bond instead. So
it kind of feels more like an American action movie, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it does, doesn't? Yeah, yes. And a lot of it is in America, isn't it? It's kind of based in like Miami and around there. And you're right, it doesn't, in Bahamas and things, it doesn't quite have the location hopping sort of thing.
I think that's also a thing, again, as an American, like, A View to Kill, I'm not a big fan of that, and like, License to Kill I like, but I guess all the ones that take place in America, I guess as an American, like watching James Bond go to America to me is like, I just don't like, come on, I don't care. Like, you're James Bond, why are you going to America? Like, but that's also because I live here and I get that other people may want to see it, but like every movie takes place in America. I live in LA, okay? Half the movies take place in the same 4 cities because that's where we shoot movies. They make movies in Atlanta, New York, and LA. So it's like that's where movies take place. So it's like I don't need to see James Bond go to like, personally, to like places that I can go to. I like seeing James Bond go other places that I don't know if I'll be able to make it to in my life. I know it's not a requirement for a movie, but I'm always like, oh, Miami, yeah, I've been to Florida, I've been to Disney World.
It's okay. Sure. Absolutely. So yeah, obviously.
Do you feel like that? Sorry, do you like how much of them? Do you like seeing James Bond in London? Like, do you feel like seeing him further away, or do you like? Do you get annoyed when he's there for too long?
Yeah, not really, because you're right. It's just like, well, I know where that street is, or I know where that backdrop is, and it's kind of like, yeah, exactly, London. I've been there. Yeah, I would rather see him in locations where I've not been, or somewhere that's just different. And you're right, it's just movies being predominantly American financed and shot. It's, I think everyone around the world has seen New York and Los Angeles, so like we don't necessarily need to see that again, unless it's showing just like a really, really obscure part that doesn't get shown. But I kind of agree with you, and I know what you mean. Again, I kind of remember it being kind of a big thing at the time that in between License to Kill and the next Bond, when they announced Pierce Brosnan and GoldenEye, it felt like it had been a long time. It kind of felt like Bond had been...
It was the longest gap. It was 6 years at that time.
Yeah.